Welcome back to PrepStation. We are still in SSCE Tutorials Geography. For this session, we'll be looking at vegetation belts in Nigeria. Vegetation. When we talk about vegetation, we are talking about plants. Plants coverage varies from one part of the country to the other. So for this class, we'll be looking at different parts of the country and the type of vegetation that can be found in those places. Vegetation. This simply means the plants which cover an area. So when we talk about the vegetation of Nigeria, we are talking about the diverse plants that covers the country's landscape. Basically, there are two kinds of vegetation. We have the forest vegetation, and we also have the savanna vegetation. For this discourse, we'll be looking at the forest vegetation in terms of the tropical rainforest, the mangrove swamp, and the freshwater swamp. In terms of savanna, we'll be looking at the Guinea savanna, the Sudan savanna, and the Sahel savanna. This is a map of Nigeria showing the vegetation belts in Nigeria. At the northeast corner, here specifically, you have the Sahel savanna. It's very small. This is the Maiduguri axis. So this is where you have the Sahel savanna. You can see from the key, this represents the Sahel savanna. Locations here include Maiduguri in Borno State. Immediately after the Sahel savanna, you have the next belt, which is the Sudan savanna. I'm talking about this part. Places here include Sokoto, Kano, Katsina states. Now, away from the Sahel, the Sudan savanna, you now have the largest vegetation belt. We are talking about the Guinea savanna. You can see that the Guinea savanna is the largest vegetation belt when you look at how the vegetation belts are demarcated. Places within this belt include Zaria, Lokoja, Enugu states, so to mention. Away from the savanna, you now have the forest vegetation belt. Now, before we look at the forest vegetation belt, from the map, you can see that from here, going upwards, are the savanna. So savanna vegetation takes a larger part of the country's vegetation belt. The savanna vegetation takes a larger part of the country's vegetational belt. And inside the savanna vegetation belt, the largest in the savanna vegetation belt in Nigeria is the Guinea savanna, and then the smallest savanna vegetation belt in Nigeria is the Sahel savanna, located in the Maiduguri axis, close to Lake Chad. So let's now get back to the forest vegetation belt in Nigeria. Here we have places like Ibadan, Benin, where we have the tropical rainforest. And then we have the freshwater swamp, and then we now have the mangrove swamp forest located in the coastal areas of the Niger Delta region. The tropical rainforest. Look at our pictorial representation of the tropical rainforest. You can see that the forest is dense, clustered with trees of various species. And then the floor of the forest is dark because sunlight cannot penetrate to the floor of the forest due to the thick canopies of foliage of trees. We have diverse, it's not just one kind of tree, we have diverse species of trees. So this type of forest is found in places like Ondo State, Osun, Edo, Sapele, Ibadan, Cross River, and the Nigerian-Cameroon border. What are the kind of trees that you find in this type of forest? You have a variety of trees such as mahogany, iroko, ebony, African walnuts, obeche, etc. The characteristics of the tropical rainforest. The vegetation is dominated by a great variety of trees. These trees exist in 3 layers. We have the upper layer, the tallest trees constitute the upper layers. We have the middle layer where you have trees within the middle range. And then you have the ground layer. The foliage of these trees, the foliage of the trees are broad and evergreen. They like the kind of trees, these trees, the kind of leaves these trees have are broad and always evergreen. If we go back to the previous picture, you can see the lush green vegetation that you have there. The leaves of the trees overlap each other, making it difficult for sunlight to penetrate to the floor of the forest. High temperature, high rainfall, and long rainy season combine to favor plant growth throughout the year. So this forest is always blossoming due to the abundant rainfall, availability of good temperature, and good moisture. The next forest we are considering is the mangrove swamp. Look at the picture of the mangrove swamp here. One of the unique things about the mangrove swamp is the buttress system. You can see the roots of the trees jutting out into the creeks or the waters. So the buttress root system, that's the unique system about this mangrove swamp. These mangroves, we could have them in varieties. We have the red mangroves and the white mangroves. This kind of vegetation is found in the coastal areas, the creeks of the Niger Delta in Nigeria, in locations such as Port Harcourt, Calabar, Warri, Oron, Ibadan, and Eket in Akwa Ibom State. The common species, as I earlier hinted, are the white and red mangroves. Characteristics. The characteristics of this forest. The area is waterlogged, so that it is a swampy and salty. The place is waterlogged, and the kind of water there is marine water, salty. It has a saline concentration of salt, high salinity content. Only plants which can survive in this kind of saline environment can thrive in that area. Of course, the white and red mangrove can thrive, can tolerate the salt contents in the water there. So you also have large quantities of mud or silt brought by the river. The river told us that this kind of vegetation is found in the coastal community. So you always have the wave bringing into the shoreline deposits of mud and silt. The mangrove swamp grow close to each other, forming a tangled mass with many buttress roots which sap out of the swampy soil. We'll buttress this particular characteristic. I'll go back to the picture. You can see how they are clustered together. You can see the buttress roots, they are tangled, and you can see the buttress root jutting into the saline water here. The next category of forest is the freshwater swamp. This is found in Niger Delta, around the freshwater creeks and lagoons and lakes. The common species include raffia palm, much valued for wine. The characteristics of this vegetation belt is similar to that of the mangrove swamp, only that this one is fresh water. That means this water does not have salt content. And then the tide does not get to the forest zone. The next vegetation belt we'll be considering holistically is the Guinea Savanna. Let's take a look at the picture. You can see large expanse of grassland, tall grasses, and then the trees are scattered. The trees are not concentrated like the ones you have in the forest belts previously discussed. So the Guinea Savanna, recall the Guinea Savanna is the largest vegetation belt in Nigeria. It is found in locations such as Lokoja, Ilorin, Makurdi, Osogbo, Taraba, etc. The common species, it is predominantly occupied by tall grasses and very few trees, such as the shea butter, the wild oil palm, etc. Characteristics of the Guinea Savanna: the trees are deciduous and vary in density from place to place. What do we mean by deciduous? They shade their leaves once in every year. Most of the trees have umbrella shapes. I'll take you back to the picture. You can see the trees here, they have umbrella shape. They shade their leaves during the dry season. The Sudan Savanna. The Sudan Savanna is found in places like Sokoto, Katsina, Kano, and Dutse. The common species found here are acacia, date palm, and baobab tree. Characteristics: the vegetation consists of short grasses. Remember, whenever we say savanna, we are talking about vegetation that is predominantly grassland, only few stands of trees. The few trees are deciduous in nature. One thing about the Sudan Savanna in Nigeria is that the natural vegetation has been replaced due to the activities of farmers. So most of the Sudan Savanna belts in Nigeria are now fallowed land. Sahel Savanna. This is found at the northeastern corner of the country in Maiduguri or the Lake Chad region. The common species, the vegetation cover is mainly grass, which is short and tough. The common trees here are acacia and baobab. Characteristic of this savanna belt is the presence of drought-resistant trees, drought-resistant tree species. And the grasses occur in patches. You don't have large expanse of grass. You have a particular portion of grassland, and then you see a bare surface, and then you now see another patch of grassland. Importance of vegetation. Number one, vegetation protects the soil. If not for the presence of vegetation, the grasses and the trees, rainfall would have eroded the topsoil. But this vegetation, the roots of the trees and the grasses, as well as their trees, they help to protect the soil from erosional activities. Also, number two, food and raw materials. The vegetation, some of the food we eat are plant-based. That is one of the importance of vegetation, they serve as food. So when you take out plants from any of the vegetation, whether the forest or savanna, and make use of it as food, That means you are enjoying the vegetational belts or resources of the country. Also, the timber from the forest can be used to make furniture. It can be used to make wood needed for construction. The firewood, as well as the fruits that we can take from this forest, constitute the food and raw material derivatives from the vegetation. Number 3, habitat. The vegetation provides habitat for wild animals. If you take out the forest, you will not have vegetation for lions, monkeys, and the rest in the forest. We also have some wildlife that are adapted to the savanna vegetation. So the vegetation serves as habitat for wildlife. National park. Some of the vegetation in Nigeria, especially the forest vegetation, has been declared a national park or game reserve. So this is one of the importance. So when such areas have been declared as national park or game reserve, that means you cannot do hunting there, you cannot cut down trees there. The forests there are preserved or conserved for future use. Revenue generation. We have what we call ecotourism, where tourists will go and see how these vegetations, how they thrive in their natural ecosystem or the natural environment. People will go and see the tropical rainforest, what is happening in the tropical rainforest, what kind of species of animals do you have in a tropical rainforest. So this is tourism is one of the importance of the vegetation. Deforestation. We can't just discuss vegetation in Nigeria without a mention of vegetation, because this is one of the challenge confronting the vegetation belts in Nigeria, or the vegetation resources in Nigeria. So deforestation is the removal of the forest or other natural vegetation from an area without replacing it. Farming activities is depleting the vegetation. Timber, what we call lumbering, felling down of the forestry, is depleting the vegetation. Urbanization is encroaching into their forest, causing the cutting down of the forest for urban sprawl, for urbanization. Collection of firewood, grazing by animals, construction of road, dams or other infrastructure, and oil exploration and exploitation is causing depletion of the forest or vegetation reserve of Nigeria. Past questions associated with vegetation resources in Nigeria. This question asks that which of the following is not a characteristic of the rainforest? A, it has tall trees with buttressed roots and evergreen broad leaves. It has deciduous trees and aerial roots. The trees in it have heights and layers of canopies. Some of its trees are climbers, creepers, and epiphytes. So remember that the question is, which of the following is not a characteristic of the rainforest? The right answer there is option A. It has tall trees with buttressed roots and evergreen broad leaves. Number 2, trees are deciduous when we say trees are deciduous, what do we mean? A, have thorny barks and fleshy leaves. B, are in pure stand, having just one type of species. C, generally shed their leaves during one season of the year. Do not shed their leaves at any season of the year. The right answer is C, generally shed their leaves during one season of the year. In which of the following vegetation belts is lumbering an important economic activity? A, savanna, B, tundra, C, Sudan, D, tropical rainforest. Lumbering has to do with cutting down of forest trees. So of course, this can only happen in the tropical rainforest. So the right option there is D. The acacia tree is commonly found in the A, coniferous forest, B, Mediterranean forest, C, savanna, D, mangrove. Number 5, which of the following is not a major benefit of savanna vegetation? Which of the following is not a major benefit for savanna vegetation? Livestock farming, arable crop cultivation, aquaculture, game reserve. Of course, the obvious answer there is C. You cannot do aquaculture in the savanna vegetation belts. The forest is both dense and luxuriant and contains a great variety of plants with broad-leaved trees. This statement describes the savanna, tropical rainforest, Mediterranean woodland, warm temperate forest. The right answer is B, which is the tropical rainforest. The essay part. Draw a sketch map of Nigeria. On the map, show and name one area with I, mangrove swamp vegetation, rainforest vegetation, Guinea savanna, Sudan savanna. In this question, you have to sketch the map of Nigeria. The mangrove swamp vegetation is found in the Niger Delta region of the country, in places like Warri, in places like Delta State, in places like Ibno, in places like Oron. That is where you have the mangrove swamp. The rainforest vegetation belt is found still in the southern part of the country, in places like Calabar, in places like Ibadan. Those are the places that you have the rainforest vegetation belt. You have the Guinea savanna vegetation in places like Kogi State. Remember, the Guinea savanna vegetation is the largest vegetation belt in Nigeria. The Sudan savanna vegetation can be found in places like Kano State and Katsina State. The B part of the question, name 3 types of forests found in the forest zone of Nigeria. We can have mahogany, we can have iroko, we can have ubeche, we can have ebony trees. These are some of the common species of trees found in the forest zone of Nigeria. Explain 4 contributions of forest vegetation to the economic development of Nigeria. This is the map of Nigeria showing the vegetation belt. Here is where you have the Sahel savanna. Here is where you have the Sudan savanna. This is the Guinea savanna. And then you have the tropical rainforest. And then you have the mangrove swamp here. This slide discusses the common species of trees that you find in the tropical rainforest, the mahogany, iroko, ebony, ubeche, and African walnuts. Contributions of forests to the economic development of Nigeria. The timber we have, the timber that we use in making roofing materials. Before you roof, you have to make arrangements of roofs. The rafters and the rest is derived from the forest. The furniture that we use in our houses, the wardrobe, the kitchen cabinets, and the rest are made of timber from the forest. Some of the electric poles, those ones not made of concrete, are acquired from the forest. Teak, specifically, is used in making electric poles derived from the forest. Number two, the roots, leaves, and barks of some trees are used as medicinal herbs. Some of the forests are national parks and game reserves, which are tourist sites. It serves as natural habitat for wildlife. The dead wood serves as firewood for local community. It facilitates the establishment of forestry commissions. Without the presence of vegetation, we wouldn't have had Nigerian Forestry Commission. Some of the products of the forest are consumed as food. Example, mushrooms, honey, berries, etc. This past question has to do with lumbering. Recall, lumbering is the felling down of trees for economic benefit. And this activity is common in the tropical rainforest. So the question here is, identify any 4 factors that favors lumbering in Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, in dealing with this question, lumbering is lumbering. Anyway, whether it is in Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, whether it is in Zaire, the same factors favor lumbering activity. The B part is explain 4 problems of lumbering in the area, and then outline 2 ways in which any of the problems identified in B can be solved. Let's now look at the question holistically. Lumbering is the cutting down of economic trees in the forest for domestic use, for industrial use, or for commercial purpose. One of the aspects of the question requires us to list out the factors that favors lumbering. Number 1, you can't do lumbering when there are no abundant trees in the forest. So the presence of varieties of trees in the tropical rainforest make possible lumbering activities. Availability of experienced lumbermen. Lumber activity requires some skilled experts to actually cut down these trees, process it into logs. So you need this skilled labor called lumbermen to actually do the lumbering activity. High demand for timber in both local and international markets. There must be good transport network to facilitate movements of the logs. After cutting down this tree into logs, you have to convey it to the sawmill where it will be processed into different sizes of wood. So that requires a good transportation network. Favorable climate for the growth of the trees and favorable government policies. Yes, governments may actually regulate the activities of lumbering. They actually specify the kind of lumbering activities. One of it is selective exploitation. They may ask that you don't just cut these trees indiscriminately. Only mature tree stand should be cut. And when you cut this tree, you have to plant other trees to replace the one that you've cut down. So that could be a government policy. So these government policies are in place to regulate lumbering activities. Challenges that hinder lumbering. Number 1, bush burning. Because of the activities of farmers, the forest is being burnt. And when they burn this forest, they are destroying the natural ecosystem and, of course, destroying the trees there. When these trees are burnt down, you won't have trees to cut down and use for lumbering. Difficult terrain. Some of these forests are inaccessible due to the difficult terrain. Unregulated logging activities can contribute to the illegal trade and further exacerbate environmental damages. A sustainable lumbering activity requires that only mature tree stand should be cut down. And as you cut down, you plant as many trees as possible to replace the one that you've cut down. That's sustainable exploitation of the forest trees. Measures to solve the problems of lumbering. The problems that we've identified, what are the measures that can be used to address them? Number one, selective exploitation, as I've mentioned. Number two, there should be proper monitoring. Lumbering activities should not be allowed to be executed haphazardly. The government should put proper monitoring mechanism to checkmate the activities of illegal lumbermen. There should be provision of good roads to facilitate easy movement of the logs, and reforestation. Remember, as I said, when you cut down one tree, you have to plant as many as possible. This is called reforestation or replanting. Logging permits. The government should grant permits to check the activities of illegal lumbermen or loggers. Contribution of lumbering to the economy. One of the problems requires that we highlight the contributions of lumbering to the economy. Without lumbering, there wouldn't be wood that we use for construction. There wouldn't be wood that we use for making of furniture. Secondly, it generates revenue to the government through issuance of permits to the loggers or the lumbermen. It's a means of livelihood. People rely on lumbering activities to earn income for themselves. Without lumbering activities, there wouldn't be the sawmills that are responsible for processing the logs into the different sizes of woods. So those sawmills will fold up if there are no lumbering activity. Thank you very much for your time. In our future class, we'll be looking at physical geography, and some of the topics to be considered are mountains, volcanicity, and earthquake.